Welcome back, kids. Time to get all cozy and comfortable and pull up a little blanket over your toesies, kick your feet up a little bit, turn the lights down low, put on the fan, and we're going to do a little story time with Kurt Thompson in Music History 101. We've actually made our way up now to the Baroque period. Baroque as in strange or oblong, not broke as in no money. So Baroque. And looks like the first dude that they have in the Baroque period that we're going to cover is Monteverdi. Monteverdi. How would you like that name? Monteverdi, get in there. It's time for dinner. So the book begins like this. The Renaissance era ended and the Baroque period began on March 25th, 1600 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. No other history of music has the courage to make this statement with such conviction. I just wanted to set the record straight and clear up any lingering misunderstanding. The Renaissance hung around for a few more decades in England, but on the European continent it was all washed up. Listeners had grown tired of hearing the same old polyphony of the so-called ars perfecta, or perfect art, to be found in the music of Josquin, Palestrina, and the rest of that crowd. They wanted something new to listen to, and composers were willing to oblige, since they were running out of things to say in the old idiom anyway. Claudio Monteverdi was one of the leading lights in the change from the old style to the new. He referred to the old polyphonic style as the first practice. His newer style of music he called the second practice. He told everybody that one of these days he would write a book explaining all about his views on the subject. It says here he never got around to it. Monteverdi was born in 1567 in Cremona, a little town in the north of Italy. Cremona was a pretty place to live. The houses were large and graceful, the streets wide and straight, but musically it was a bit of a bore, not nearly as exciting as Mantua or Ferrara or Venice. Monteverdi's father, like Handel's after him, was a barber surgeon who later became a physician. A barber surgeon who became a physician. So you cut hair and then you also operate on people. Interesting. Weird. Monteverdi probably learned about music from singing in the Cremona Cathedral. Church musicians were not as... Stage turn, folks. Don't wake up. They weren't as prestigious as musicians at the royal courts, but they were higher on the social ladder than the town minstrels, or piffari, whose job was to follow the mayor around and blow trumpets just before he said anything important or cut a ribbon or something. Evidently, Monteverdi learned well, because he published his first book of motets when he was only 15 years old. There's a guy that wasn't going out on Friday nights and Saturday nights partying. He was back at home publishing and composing motets. They were written for only 3 voices, which is not so difficult as 4 voices, but was still something to be proud of. By the time he turned 20, Monteverdi had published 5 books of motets and madrigals in 5 years. You're probably just hearing the hum of my voice right now because you're asleep. I'm almost asleep too. In fact, I need to have another drink of my coffee. Music history, one of the best ways to go to sleep. If you ever get an insomnia and you can't go to sleep, just turn on Story Time with Kurt Thompson and 101 Music History. And your whole household will be asleep before you know it. Let's continue on. Let's see if I can make it through this. So, in 1591, Monteverdi packed a bag and set off for Mantua, where he became a composer at the court of Duke Vincenzo Gonzaga. Vincenzo's father, Guglielmo, had been a keen patron of the arts, and his court had attracted fine musicians and artists from across Europe. Vincenzo wasn't half the man his father was, at least when it came to appreciating good music. He was a bit of a cad, in fact, a womanizer and a gambler. When he grew tired of his first wife, he divorced her on the grounds that she was deformed. He didn't specify how. Her family countered that he was an impotent old so-and-so. Vincenzo then suggested a test of his virility with any virgin girl in Venice. For some reason, the matter was dropped. Yeah, these people back then were crazy. Despite his character faults, Vincenzo did like music, if only as a means of impressing his mistresses. He once planned an elaborate spectacle with music costumes, fancy tapestries, and lots of good food, just to please his Spanish mistress, Agnes de Argati. But everything was cancelled when she said she was bored with the idea. Monteverdi was kept busy composing for Vincenzo. There was a concert every Friday in the Great Hall of Mirrors. In 1592, Vincenzo took his army across the Alps to help Austria fight off the attacking Turks, and Monteverdi went along for the ride, although he didn't enjoy it very much. The fighting, however, impressed him so much that many years later he wrote a book of warlike madrigals. Part of Monteverdi's annoyance came from having to pay many of his traveling expenses out of his own pocket. Nowadays, that sort of expense would be considered a legitimate tax deduction. Okay, here it shows Monteverdi, who is not a warrior or a fighter, I guess at a desk composing while everybody else is fighting. It's kind of funny. So, in 1600, I don't know about you kids, but Dad's getting kind of sleepy here. In 1600, a music theorist named Giovanni Artusi published an attack on modern music which he thought was totally incomprehensible. Artusi complained that new composers were breaking all the established rules laid down after centuries of noble tradition. Although he didn't name Monteverdi specifically, it was pretty obvious to everyone he was complaining about. Monteverdi didn't seem to mind. He went on composing just the same. A few years later, Artusi published another attack, this time naming names. Monteverdi wasn't about to give in. Quite the contrary, he went so far as to develop a whole new style of music, which marked the beginning of opera. His music drama, Orfeo, of 1607, could be considered the first true opera. That's spelled O-R-F-E-O. Although the idea had come from the early writings of Vincenzo Galilei, father of the astronomer Galileo, who was a champion of what he called the representative style. Galilei thought this style of composition was a return to the ancient Greek ideals of music. He had no proof for this theory, but since he had no real indication of what Greek music sounded like, but the idea sounded impressive. This year, 1607, was a good one. Excuse me, kids. I'm ready to take my nap after going through some music history here. The Italians were just beginning to understand the proper use of forks at the dinner table. I gotta say that again. The year 1607 was a good one in other respects. The Italians were just beginning to understand the proper use of forks at the dinner table. Were they using their fingers before then, or spoons? So things were looking up. A big break for Monteverdi came in 1610 when he got the plum job of Maestro di Cappella at St. Mark's, the biggest and richest church in Venice. He was paid 300 ducats a year, which was more money than he'd ever seen in his entire life, and the 100 ducats more than the previous maestro had got. The job kept him busy. He supervised a choir of about 50 singers, an instrumentalist, and had to prepare and compose music for some 40 major church festivals each year. Yikes. It's amazing what they were doing back then. Venetians knew how to party, and everyone went there for a good time, sort of like Las Vegas. Monteverdi loved his new job, which offered him creative status and a steady income. When the Mantuan Duke tried to offer him his old job back, Monteverdi was quick to refuse. It was just as well he didn't return to Mantua. Not long afterwards, members of the Gonzaga family and the imperial army got into an argument over who should have control of the dukedom. The whole city was sacked, and the soldiers infected everybody with plague. It was no longer a fun place to be. Monteverdi escaped the plague, but old age finally got him when he was 75. The city clerk got his age wrong on the death certificate, but it was too late to make any difference. So that's Monteverdi, folks. Some of you, I can hear you snoring right now. You're already in La La Land. And, oh, isn't it nice how studying about music history really can put you to sleep? I'm getting sleepy myself. Why don't I just doze off just a little bit here?